so much for making time for me and saying yes to this interview.
It's my absolute pleasure. I'm so glad you asked me.
Can you please introduce yourself and tell me a little about your background?
Sure. So my name is Amelia Cormack. I am originally from Australia, but I have been living here in New York it'll be 8 years in October.
So when did you first hear about Come From Away, Amelia?
I first heard about Come From Away when it opened here in New York. I was actually on tour at the time, so I didn't get to see it. And it just sounded like the buzz that was around it and the way people were talking about it, it just sounded like such a beautiful and important show. And I really, really was excited to see it. And then I was asked to audition for the tour for the first year cast. And that's when I kind of got to know it a lot better, obviously, and got to see it eventually.
What do you remember about your CFA audition, Amelia?
I actually ended up auditioning a number of times over the 2018-2019 period before I booked the show. I just remember it was just there were just such wonderful roles to audition for, and the team was so warm, and I just loved the idea of the show and the music, and I feel very fortunate as an actor, musician, and a singer and actor predominantly. I'm not a terrible dancer, but I would never put me in a dance call. And one of the things I love is just whenever I do movement calls with fellow singer actors, they're just this incredibly joyous, beautiful, supportive, wonderful environment. And I just remember being in that movement call and everyone's helping each other out and being really supportive. And I really love that about the audition process for shows like this as well. They're trying to really find good people. And you can see that in the way that people interact within the auditions.
Did you reach out to any CFA standbys from other companies for advice or support?
So actually, Marika Aubrey, who's Bev in the US tour that I'm in, is actually a very old, very, very dear friend of mine. We've been friends for a very long time. So I definitely, originally, when I was auditioning for that second year, I definitely asked her, because she was a standby at the time, and then she moved from a standby into Bev. And so, yeah, I definitely picked her brains and kind of asked her, but they weren't quite sure where they wanted to place me, I felt, throughout the audition, because I auditioned for a number of different characters, and I felt really honored because it was a sign that they really liked me. They just didn't know what to do with me. So I auditioned for Diane, for who else did I read for Beulah, a number of different things. So when I found out that they were looking at me for a standby, yeah, I definitely went, Marika, help me.
For those who don't know, what's the difference between a standby and understudy and a swing?
Oh, that's such a big question. A swing in a big show, say, for example, I was in Les Miserables. The swings cover the ensemble. So the understudies are all taken from the ensemble. So I was a cover of Madame Thénardier. And so when Madame Thénardier went out, I stepped in as her understudy, and then the swing stepped into my ensemble track. So understudies tend to cover less parts. They may cover one or two, but usually not more than that. And then whereas a swing will cover a number of different ensemble tracks. I mean, I've had friends that have covered 9 or 10 different ensemble tracks, and that is a job I cannot wrap my head around. Whereas a standby for us in Come From Away, because all the parts are as important as each other, they call out what we do standby. It is very comparable to a swing in that we cover here in the US tour, we cover 5 different tracks. But I think it's kind of acknowledging what a massive undertaking that is for us on Come From Away. In other shows, I know they have alternates as well, which are, so for example, in Wicked, they may have an alternate that just goes on for, say, Elphaba or Glinda. So it's a much more specialized role. So yeah, that's how I would kind of characterize the main differences.
What is it like to cover 5 tracks in Come From Away?
Very, very complicated. Come From Away is one of the most complicated shows I've ever done, which I know is probably will surprise a lot of your viewers, because from the stage, from the audience, sorry, it looks like just this seamless, beautiful, simple, it's just tables and chairs. But whenever I used to bring people backstage, I'd say, look at the floor, and it looks like someone's dropped a confetti bomb on the floor with all the different marks that we have. And so whenever you go on for a different track, you have to know which person moves which, and there are 14 chairs and at least three tables, if not more. So it is very complicated, and the stakes are really high, because if you mess up a chair at one point, you could mess up the next couple of scenes for the next person. Or if you don't bring a particular item of clothing on for another character, then that's going to mess up the rest of that person's track. So it's very high stakes, and it's a very tough job, but it's also extremely rewarding, because each of the roles that we cover are so special and unique, and we get to tell such a beautiful story with each of these characters.
Can you actually see the arrows on the spike marks during the performance?
You can. It depends on the lighting state. Some lighting states are darker than others, and so you just have to be really careful about make sure, and sometimes in a very short period of time, you know which arrows are facing which direction. So
Come From Away Standby from Toronto told me to ask you, how do you name your chairs on tour?
Oh, that's interesting. So I know in Australia, they have their own set of names for each chair. I had my own little names for the chairs, because it's now been over a year since we've been on stage. I can't remember what some of them were, but some of them, oh gosh, what were some of them? Bluey, I know, was one. Oh God, isn't that terrible? I can't even remember. But yes, but each company has their own set of names for the chairs. I know there's one I call Peachy, because it looks like it has a peachy color. But yeah, God, I can't remember. I know the minute I see them again, I'll know, but right off the top of my head, I can't remember.
What was your learning process like? Choreography, all these harmonies. How do you compartmentalize all these 5 tracks in your brain?
It's a very good question. I was very fortunate in that as a standby, because I was rehearsed in with the year 2 cast, so it was myself, Sharon Saye, and Julia Nitel that joined, who are the current Bonnie and Janice on the road. And so the 3 of us rehearsed together with Kenita Miller, who was going into the Broadway company as Hannah. And so actually the 4 of us rehearsed all together. And so I got the very fortunate experience as a standby to rehearse one of my roles as if I was going to be in that show every night, which is not an opportunity that many standbys get. So I was very, very fortunate. Beulah was the first role that I learned. I was very much taught that role as if it was mine, as if I was going to be doing it on a nightly basis. And I'm so grateful for that experience, because, a lot of what's tough sometimes as a standby is during the rehearsals, because they're rehearsing the principal main playing cast. You're spending a lot of time on the sidelines watching, and you've got to be ready to get up at a moment's notice. So for me, to have that experience of knowing that role so well by the time I joined the company was a true gift, and something that I'm very, very grateful for. In terms of how keeping all 5 in our head, you get very, very good at compartmentalizing. So I cover Beulah and Hannah, who are opposite each other, and they spend a lot of time together, and some parts of their tracks are really similar, and then others are really different. And I have definitely got into one particular case where I dropped a phone off as Hannah, and then, because that's what Beulah does at the point, and then realized, oh God, I need that phone, and I'm not going to be able to leave stage for a very long time. So, but you cannot think, and I always say to people, you can't think more than the next step ahead, because you sometimes as a standby find yourself going, oh God, I don't know what the chair move is at this scene 5 scenes later, and you just can't do that. You just have to go, all right, what's the next move, what's the next? And it's a really good lesson in just staying in the present. So it's a good life lesson, I guess, just being able to really go, no, I know where I am right now, and where I need to be next will come to me. But yeah, you just have to kind of forget about the rest of them while you're doing the one that you're on. Because if you start going off into other areas, then you'll forget it, and it will be very confusing. We also had just finished learning our 5th track the day that tour shut down. So that was, we had just finished learning it. So yeah, so that was, an interesting experience to be like, oh, we've just learned all our 5 tracks and now we're not going to be able to do them. At that stage, we thought, oh, for a little while, but obviously for a long while. So those 5th tracks, learning them again is, will be interesting.
How did you find out about the hiatus?
So I'll never forget this. We were in rehearsals that day, rehearsing the last sections of, I was learning Bev, and my friend Kilty was, I think, learning Kevin T, and we were getting the text messages coming. This was the Thursday, the 12th, and we were getting the text messages coming in going, it's Broadway shutting down, this tour shutting down, this tour shutting down. And then we had a show that night that was our last show. And it was just it was very eerie watching the chips fall. And I was actually in the show that last night, and it was an extremely poignant moment, because you could really feel this sense of, people needing to see humanity come together and humans pulling together. And obviously we didn't know what was going to happen, but I feel very grateful that I was able to be on that last night, and I got to experience that, because I'll never forget it, that's for sure.
What do you miss the most about Come From Away?
I miss the people. I miss the people the most. We are very, very fortunate. Our standby family, 6 of us, including our dance captain, and we are very, very, very close. And I miss being in rehearsals with those humans on a weekly. I miss them. And also, we are so fortunate that we have a company that really gets along and really loves each other and respects each other, and I feel very grateful to be a part of the company, and I miss that. I definitely miss the people. Obviously, telling the story and seeing all these places and seeing people react to it, but I think the thing I miss the most is definitely the people.
Do you have a favorite song or favorite scene in the show?
Oh, that's a big one. In terms of the characters I get to play, I just love playing Hannah, and I love singing I'm Here. It's just such a point. And also I love the moment when, that moment of quiet when she says he's gone. I'm sorry if I'm misquoting the line, but it's that I always love that moment, because you can hear a pin drop in the audience, and as a performer, being able to hold the audience in the palm of your hand in that way, and just feel them with you and feel their shock and their sadness and their empathy is a really beautiful thing. In terms of the show itself, just the plane, so much of the plane, the way the plane stuff is done, especially that first plane when we see it and we see the way that the cast are moving, and then Lead Us Out of the Darkness, of course, is such an incredible moment, and it's a massive compliment to this creative team that they've been able to construct this show that has such beautiful, exquisite moments in it like that. It's incredible.
What helps you to remember if it's like a soprano line right now or an alto line?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of color coordination across. So all my tracks that I know have different highlighters. So in my score, it looks like it's a child's gone and colored in, because I have highlighters that match the characters that I'm playing at that time, and they've highlighted different lines throughout there. So that really helps me because I'm quite a visual person in terms of learning. So I can kind of see the track and I'll go over and I'll be like, oh, which highlighter with which character goes with which line. I love it. And I love marking up my score so that it's all these different, color coordinated patterns. And but that's what helps me remember and be really clear. And lots of pencil markings.
Which character did you struggle to learn as the most and why?
Oh, I would probably say, Bev, just because her track is very different to the other tracks. And also because it was the most recent one. And so my brain was very full already. I had 4 tracks in my head. And so the 5th one, you're always kind of like, where am I going? What am I doing? Bonnie, I find very difficult just because she's so busy. She never stops. And she's always bringing on hats and garments and things for other people and running everywhere and moving multiple chairs at multiple times. So I would probably say those 2 are the ones that I would be the most nervous about going on for.
If you could cover a male track, what would you choose, Amelia?
Oh, that is such a good question. I think I'd love to cover Claude. I think I would. I think I'd love to cover Claude. I just think he's just having, as so many of us in this show have been so lucky to meet the real people, and having met Claude, like he's just this warm, beautiful human. And I just think what he gets to do in the show is really fun. So I probably would say Claude. And I feel like I'm also the old lady standby, so it's probably appropriate that I cover one of the older men as well.
Oh, you're not old at all.
Thank you.
Amelia, how do you deal with all this waiting and not knowing when you're going to go on next and which track you're going to cover? And you don't cover your secondary characters as often. So what is it like?
It is a discipline. You have to, it's part of the job. And that's one of the things for me that when I accepted this job, I was very aware that there would probably be a lot of sitting around, but that is part of the discipline because, you can be sitting around, but if you've sat around for a while and you don't know what you're doing, and you get called on at the last minute, you have to know what you're doing. So while there's a lot of waiting, part of the job is actually running through your tracks during the show. So often, there's a rehearsal space in the theatre, I'll just go and walk through a character along with the show just to keep it fresh in my mind. And that to me is what helps keep that time filled. We also have rehearsals during the week, during the day to help us do that. But it also is helpful, especially if you know that you're going to be on, like if someone has some rostered time off, you're going to be on. I will go, especially if it's a role I haven't done in a while, I will go and walk through that track several times during the show at home. We all have our little cheat sheets that we kind of keep in our pockets, which help us if something happens and we just can't remember where we're going next. Although I will say what's really interesting is I'll often have them in my back pocket and then I never use them because I'm so kind of frantically going, where am I going? That's part of the job is keeping on your toes and making sure that you know your stuff so that you can go on at any minute. But it is a very specialized skill, that's for sure.
Did you ever have to go on mid-show, Amelia?
No, I didn't. Not yet. I've not had that experience. I can't imagine. We've had some close calls, but not mid-show. I'm trying to think if there's any other shows where I've gone on mid-show. I don't think I have. I think I've had very little notice. And at one point for a show back in Australia, I almost went on for a role that I didn't actually cover, but my character did a lot. The character I covered was opposite a lot, but no. That's a very long-winded way of answering that question. I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. Don't worry. It's your third national tour, right?
It is, yes.
What are the pros and cons of working on the road?
Oh, so there's a lot of both. It's especially not being from America, it's an amazing way to see the country, and not just America, Canada as well. With both Les Mis and I think no, Les Mis and Come From Away. I've been to Canadian cities as well. So yeah, it's a really, really amazing way to see parts of a country that you would never necessarily have gone to as a tourist. Um, yeah, that's amazing. You know, getting to see the way different audiences react in different cities, that's also really amazing. And just the camaraderie that you build up with being a touring company is really great. It really does become family in a lot of ways, and you eat, sleep, and breathe each other in this really crazy, unique way. The cons would be obviously being far away from family and friends. You know, not being in one place for more than a certain short periods of time. I also find the older I get, the changing of beds every week, my back has started to not like me very much for that. So I'm trying to kind of do my Pilates and do my exercises to help my back not complain about that so much. But yeah, it's a tough life, but it is a very rewarding life at the same time. And you tend to get very blinkered in terms of when, if you live in New York or you live in certain cities, that you forget about how big these countries are. It's the same in Australia. If you live in Sydney or Melbourne, you kind of forget how many people there are in the rest of the country and how different it can be. So I feel very fortunate that I've been paid to be able to do that.
You mentioned that the audience reacts differently. That's interesting. Can you give me an example, please?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's certain venues that you'll go to where it will be like a freaking rock concert, that you'll go out on stage and the audience will be screaming and yelling and just like being so raucous. And then there's other times where they will just be very quiet and observant and polite. But I had a great mentor in Australia who once said to me, "You can't hear a smile." And I think about that a lot, that whenever we kind of go, oh, the audience is really quiet, or they're not kind of giving us what we want. And then I always remember, but we can't hear the smile. So, but it's remarkable how different. I'm trying to think of some, I think Nashville, I've had some fun audiences in Nashville. I wasn't with the show when they played Canada, but I heard that Come From Away playing Canada was a pretty incredible experience. But yes, we tend to find the larger the city, the more kind of observant they are, the more that they kind of take it in, and you know, they're not quite as raucous. Whereas some of the smaller towns that don't get as much of the big shows, they can be really, really just up on their feet cheering.
Nick told me that they had some pretty unexpected visitors in Ottawa during the show.
I heard about that. I was not on the road for that, but I joined just after Ottawa. But yes, it sounded horrifying.
I mean, bats in theaters, that's insane.
Yeah, yeah. I did perform Les Mis in Ottawa, and we never had bats on the stage. So I don't. Yeah, it must have been. I don't know. Maybe it was the time of year. Oh yeah, it was winter when I was there. So
Probably.
I don't know.
I have read that you lost your voice when you understudied in Fame. So how do you take care of yourself and of your voice? Are there any secret tips?
Yeah, it's interesting. I basically overexerted myself. I took on too much, and I had always been the girl with the cords of steel that could do and sing anything, and I just basically took on too much, and my body just kind of went, "You need to stop." But it was the first time that my voice hadn't been there for me, and so it actually was. I had a bit of a mental health crisis with it, and then I lost my voice both literally and psychologically as well. But it was a huge catalyst for me to actually eventually move to America, because I realized that I had kind of been expecting myself to be invincible. And we're not invincible, we're human beings. And so to kind of realize that created a massive shift in my consciousness. And I actually feel I'm a much better singer for it. Yeah, it's tough on the road, especially to take care of yourself vocally, especially depending on the nature of the show. A humidifier becomes your best friend, especially if you're staying in hotels with air conditioning and you can't open a window or whatever it is. I have to have a humidifier with me. Sleep and lots of water. Are also just the most important things. I also, the other thing is that flying can be very drying. So I actually drive the tour. I have a car. So it was the first time I drove the tour, and it's something that I really, really enjoy, and I think I will do again. Yeah, but I would say those things are the most important. But it's also hard when you're in a new city and you want to go out and have a good time. And, you know, it's finding the balance between that. So of course, if you're not doing as vocally demanding a role, then you can be have a little bit more fun. Whereas, you know, doing something like Les Mis, which was very vocally demanding, I had to really, really make sure that I take care of myself. So what I'll often do is you know, the last show of the week when I know I have the day off, I might allow myself to have a little bit more fun than during the week when I know I have to go and do the show every day.
What's your favorite camper-away mishap?
Oh, I mean, we have definitely had some lyric moments with some of the company members that have been pretty hilarious. I had one that happened to me that I kind of mentioned earlier a bit about with Hannah and Beulah with the phone. But what I realized while I was on the plane, the first plane, that I went to get my phone out because she does that hello looking up, and I realized I didn't have the phone. Now she doesn't leave the stage, and I have to sing "I'm Here," which is she's meant to be on the phone the whole time, and I realized I didn't have the phone, and so I'm panicking, and I'm looking off stage to our ASM, Mackenzie, and I'm looking at her going, "I don't have the phone" in this moment, and she just see me panic stricken, and she's like, I got it. And so I'm sitting there panicking, trying to still be Hannah and do whatever I'm supposed to do, but freaking out. And then during Lead Us Out of the Darkness, Sharon, who plays Bonnie, I just feel this ninja moment, and I had my gray jacket on as Hannah, and she just popped. I felt her pop the phone in my pocket right behind me, and I breathed this massive sigh of relief. And yeah, it was just one of those beautiful stage moments where it kind of makes it more exciting, because when things go wrong, you're like, oh, how are we going to fix it? How are we going to help each other out? You know. So that was a moment. I also, one of my bras as Beulah is slightly see-through, and we may have to edit this out, but I'll just tell you, and then we can decide if we're going to edit it out. And as Hannah, you know, she has to lift up her shirt and show her bra. And my Hannah one is not see-through, slightly see-through, but my Beulah one is. And I realized as Hannah that I had the wrong bra on. And that I was going to lift up my top, and there was a chance that people might be able to slightly see my boobs, but it was only for a moment, and it wasn't that bad. But yeah, it was a moment where I went, oh, good, yep, cool.
That's a good one.
Yeah. It's not that see-through. I was probably being a little bit paranoid, but it was see-through. It was slightly see-through enough that if you were looking closely, you'd be able to see something.
Yeah. Wow. Listen, I wanted to ask you about the accents, because I can't switch accents at all. So it's amazing. How do you manage to do it?
Ever since I was a little kid, I have always loved accents. I would read out loud to myself in different accents depending on where the author was from. I was a very nerdy child and loved books. So it's always been something that I've been fascinated by. And I've been very fortunate in my career. I've gotten to explore a number of different accents, and I really, really enjoy the work. For me, it's about keying into the music of that accent wherever it is. So there's certain phrases or things that might bring you into that accent. So for me, but I will say that the Newfoundland accent I find particularly difficult, because I haven't done it in a show yet, but I have an Irish accent that I do. And so it took me a long time to adjust the combination of the Canadian with the Irish, because I would keep going into Irish sounds rather than, or I should say Southern Irish sounds rather than the Newfoundland. So that one took me a little while, but one of my favorite days in rehearsals is always the accent and dialects day. And I also think we're very fortunate as Australians. We get television from all over the world. So we grow up with Canadian, Australian, British kids TV. So we're hearing different accents all the time. So I feel like it's easier for us to switch in and out of things. So yeah, but it's one of my favorite things I love about the show is doing all the different accents.
That's remarkable. I mean, accents, harmonies, choreography. Wow, and 5 tracks. Amazing.
It's a lot. But it's fun. Otherwise, we love it. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. But you know, and I'm definitely someone that I thrive when I have a challenge, when I have something that inspires and challenges me. That's when I get really excited.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about? I've been very fortunate in my career to have lived and worked in 3 different countries. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about what a blessing that has been and what in my career, because I worked in Australia, and the fact that I left Australia, I was 30 when I moved to the UK for 2 years. And then I moved here to New York at 33. And one of the things I always say to people if I'm doing, talkbacks with students or anything is that making your dreams come true can take time, and it doesn't always happen straight away. And I'm living proof of the fact that if you just keep going, it's being able to be in there for the long haul that I think is really important for people to know, especially if they want to get into doing this for a career. And all 3 countries have been very, very different, but I have learnt so much, and there is no way that I would have been able to move to New York if I hadn't had that time in London, and if I hadn't grown up in Australia with the work ethic that we are kind of bred to have, which is you work very, very hard and you take it very, very seriously. And I'm very grateful for that. And, now to be living here, especially during the past year, and watching the creativity of people stuck in lockdown and what my friends can do. And it's been really inspiring, while challenging, very, very inspiring. So I can't wait to see what everyone comes up with next and what this new world we're entering into will bring. It kind of feels really exciting right now. Thank you so much, Amelia. It was such a pleasure to interview you. Thank you.
This is my pleasure, Elena. So nice to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.